Adding and subtracting rational expressions. Well, when we add or subtract a rational expression, rationals are fractions, so we must have a common denominator. And we've already talked about finding a least common multiple in our denominator in the previous video. So I'm going to just jump right ahead, and we're going to just start adding things. All right. So let's say we have a over a plus b. We're going to add that to b over a plus b. Well, do I have a common denominator? Yes, I do. If I have one, don't think very hard about it. Just put it down. There it is. And then I have tops. I cannot combine those. They're not the same term. So I have an a and I have a b. Now they're fractions. So anything divided by itself, we must reduce. And in this case, we get 1. So anything divided by itself is 1. Now, likewise, in our subtraction, and we got to kind of be careful when it's subtraction, because subtraction, whenever we subtract, we add the opposite sign. So let's look at a subtraction one here. Let's go y squared. Let's go add x squared to it, and then x squared minus y squared. Subtract a 2x squared. And it's also got that same common denominator. And since we're looking at that guy and we already know it, let's go ahead and put it down for answer's common denominator. Now, this is add the opposite sign. So this becomes a negative 2x squared. When I combine like terms, I get y squared, and the x squareds combined to be negative x squared. Well, these guys look very, very, very similar to one another. Okay, so you could actually do this one of two ways, really. We can get this guy to where x's are first, and we can get negative x squared plus y squared, common denominator. We can factor out the negative 1 to where we get x squared minus y squared. We get x squared minus y squared on the bottom, and anything divided by itself is negative 1. Now, let's say we forgot, and we thought, oh man, we got to factor this. Well, we can factor this, but eventually what's going to happen is the negative 1 is going to come out because you've got a y, what would it be, a y minus x up top and an x minus y on the bottom, and you're going to have to get them in order, and eventually that negative 1 is going to come out. And if I see that early enough, I can actually do that right here versus factoring that guy. It saves me a couple more steps. Okay, but either way, you still should come out with your answer being negative 1. All right, so let's just do more and more examples here. Let's see how we go. So let's do some with the numbers on the bottom. Let's go negative 3/4. Let's subtract 1 and 2x. All right, so we don't have a common denominator, so we've got to find one. Okay, common denominator between 4 and 2 is 4. And then we list our variable, or list our bases, highest exponent of each. So we got a 4x is my common denominator. Now I have to rebuild these numerators as equivalent. Well, 4 times what gets me 4x. When I do the bottom, I do the top, and I get 3x up top. 2x times what gets me 4x, so that answer would be 2 times 1 is 2. And so here I have a negative 3x minus 2 because we do not have any like terms, and nothing factors because negative 3x minus 2 is prime. So this would indeed be my answer. So I'm not all that hard. They do get a little bit longer than this. Let's try one where we have variables on the bottom. Let's go x minus 2. Let's go plus a negative 8. And let's go x squared minus 4. Well, to find my common denominator here, I have to be able to factor. So this guy's a difference of squares going x plus 2, x minus 2. So my common denominator here is all my factors. So I have an x plus 2, I have an x minus 2, highest exponent of 1 each. So I'm just going to put my common denominators on everything, plus 2, minus 2. And my answer gets to be x plus 2, x minus 2. Now here's where it gets a little bit goofy. So what am I missing from here that I took times down here? Well, that x plus 2. When I take the x plus 2 times the top, I want to go ahead and distribute it because multiplication will happen before this addition sign. So I want to go ahead and do this x squared plus 2x. I didn't do anything to the top to make it the bottom here. Okay, so from this guy to that's the same, so times 1, so this gets me negative 8. So my answer here is x squared plus 2x minus 8. Well, does it reduce? I have to factor this guy to see if it does. And any trinomial will factor this way. X and x, 4 and 2 to get 2. One of them will have to be negative, but I have to have the larger sign of positive. All over this x plus 2, x minus 2. My x minus 2's go away, reduce to 1. And I get an x plus 4, and I get an x plus 2. And that's going to be my answer on this guy. Let's do 2 more problems here. One's going to be a doozy, so hold on to yourself there. Okay, this guy here, let's go 3 over m plus 1 minus 4 over m. Well, here's my bases, and m plus 1 is not the same as m. They have to be the same, so I'm going to list my bases. Well, I have an m, and I have an m plus 1, and typically my coefficient or my letters come out in front of my groupings. So minus m plus 1, and that equals m plus 1. So now I regroup and find out my numerators here. And when I do, I distribute this guy, right? So this was an m plus 1. So this becomes 4m plus 4. Now, you have to be very careful here, because if I do that, this is actually a negative 4. When I do that, I have to distribute it all the way through. And that's the biggest problem with subtraction. So now when I combine like terms, I get a negative m value minus 4. This guy's prime. Yes, I can factor out the negative 1, but I can't really simplify it down below. So this indeed would be my answer. Okay. And the next one I'm going to pull just right out of the book, and then we'll see how well I work it. Okay, this one's got a little bit of length to it. So, and it's going to be a subtraction. Where is my cursor? Where did my cursor go? Why is it there? Okay, here we go. Sorry about that. Let's go 5x plus 11 all over x squared minus 11x plus 18. It looks like I picked one that's fairly simple here because it has the same common denominator. So let's go ahead and let's just write that denominator because I know that's going to be my answer. And this guy back here was 4x plus 20. All right, so we have to add the opposite sign. So when we distribute, this becomes a negative and that becomes a negative. So these are the signs I'm now using. So I get an x and I get minus 9. Well, here again, I have to see if that factors, if it reduces. So I got to factor this denominator. 2 factors of 18, that gets me 11. Would be 2 and 9. They have to be the same sign. They have to be negative. So x and x, 9 and 2, they both have to be negative. The x minus 9's reduce, and that leaves me with 1 on top, and it leaves me with x minus 2 on the bottom. Okay. Now remember, if these guys would have been different, you would have had to factor them out, multiply what you do the bottom, you do the top, and distribute. And those will get a little bit longer as we go through those. So, need some help there, go ahead and contact me.